this afternoon? Everybody's good? I really do appreciate the opportunity, first of all, of having the chance to speak before you guys again. A few years back, I was actually blessed to have a similar opportunity to talk about Niagara's journey through core tracking and how we got on board core tracking. So today, I'm going to talk to you guys about how we're progressing through integrated appointment scheduling and how it's transformed us in the supply chain. But first off, I'm going to talk about Niagara, who we are as a company, and why this is so important to us. So first off, Niagara was founded in 1963, and we started off as shipping 5-gallon water containers to various offices and people's homes. Fast forward years later, 60 plus years later, and now we're the largest manufacturer of bottled water in North America, and we have over 52 plants in the United States, 49 that are currently in place, with 3 additional ones that we've added this year. So with that, we ship a lot of truckloads. We expect this year to ship close to 1.7 million truckloads in the United States. And you can see how our map is, we're all across the US, and we ship to all different nodes and all different customers. We have roughly 500 different customers that we ship to, and well over 10,000 ship points that we ship to every year. And with a company this scale, the expansion underscores the needs for scalable, efficient supply chain solutions to support increased production and distribution demands. So next, I'm going to talk to you more about the challenge. Some of this seems very straightforward. Many of us are dealing with this. But one of the biggest issues we're having is on our inbound scheduling, as well as some opportunities on our outbound scheduling. So when you think about a bottled water company, you're like, inbound scheduling, what do you guys need to schedule? Like some labels, some films, a few things like that. But as we've grown over the last 10 years especially, we've grown more into the space of providing beverage products. And so with beverage products, the litany of inbound materials have grown exponentially. So for example, most of our plants 3-4 years ago may only needed 4 or 5 inbound shipments a day. So with 4 or 5 inbound shipments a day, even if drivers show up at similar times, not too big of a deal. But multiply that times 4 or 5, where we now need 20 to 25 inbound truckloads a day with no inbound dock scheduling at all. So we all know what happens in that situation. The first thing that happens is every driver wants to show up at 9 a.m., right? All the drivers show up at 9 a.m., and then that creates an influx at our docks. We're not probably staffed appropriately, leading to carrier backups at the facilities, which they're extremely frustrated about that. And then we ultimately, to try to solve this, what do? Maybe add more labor, add more forklifts, add more LGVs, or whatever we need to do to process those particular trucks. But then after you get through that, you have inefficient labor usage because everyone's coming at one time, and then you have other hours of the day where you don't have any drivers showing up at all. So this was a major problem for us and a major challenge that we had to overcome. So that defining the challenge was very important to us. Then from an outbound perspective, while we did have something that scheduled our outbound shipments, it was extremely inflexible. It was a legacy system that didn't allow us to be flexible in our appointment times and our scheduling and the shipment types. All of this effectively led to increased detention costs, which none of us want. So critical thing for us, again, like I mentioned, is really defining the problem and then determining, okay, what are we going to do next? So as I mentioned on the last slide, managing inbound was not sustainable for growth. So think about this. We have a total of 77 facilities, including our 3PL, 1PLs. We grew just in the last 10 years from roughly 25 plants to well over 50. And the increased manual labor that we had by not having any type of inbound dock system was unsustainable, but it was also prone to errors, delays, and inefficiencies, which hinders our ability to grow. And so what we wanted to do is transition Niagara from manual to an automated integrated scheduling system that would provide support for not only our day-to-day team members, but also it would not inhibit our ability to grow. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is really how we came through the decision strategy. And I think it's very important as you guys are looking to add additional software to your suite of tools to use, this is a very critical step. The first thing you want to do is maximize your current investments. So that's understanding your current TMS system. It's understanding the current providers and systems that you have today, and how do you leverage those first? And that's what we really did. Because we knew that prior to going to any new system, we had to understand what we had currently and understand what we needed to add on top of that. The next thing, and we've heard this most of today, talking about driving orchestration. So really, we knew that to orchestrate properly, a core tracking was foundational to our data wealth, right? So we had to stem our data because really, we couldn't orchestrate what we couldn't see. So we had to make sure that the first thing that we did was leverage our core tracking tools and make sure those are all in place. So you may ask, okay, how do you enable that piece? We wanted to make sure that that piece was enabled by using the right technology and using the growth strategy that we had in place. All right, the next two things we did was we settled on a two-pillar architecture structure. Predictive visibility, which was led by core tracking, real-time shipment data across the 1.7 million shipments that we had was critical. The next step we did is made sure that we used an autonomous appointment management system that powered, using the AI tools to power across those 77 facilities that I mentioned before. But what you must do when you're going through this step is use intelligent integration. So for us, it starts with our ERP system that led to our OTM system that feeds into 4 kites that ultimately feeds to our WMS data flow. By having all these things synchronized is the only way that any of this is going to work. So predictive visibility, autonomous appointment management, and leveraging all of your systems is a critical point that you need to follow. So now let's look for a second at the full picture. So as I mentioned before, we had no inbound system. So from an inbound perspective, we knew that we needed predictive ETAs and visibility on supplier shipments. That was extremely critical as a first step. So what does this do? We all know it improved downstream planning and resource allocation so that we can properly plan our docks and ultimately our facilities would be informed. The facilities, again, pivoting from an operation that's manual to an operation that's automated for inbound and outbound shipments. This makes sure that the stakeholders upstream are informed and the stakeholders downstream. Making sure that everyone understands when their shipment's scheduled is extremely critical. I was just talking to one of our partners right before I came up on the stage, and we were talking about how sometimes that was confusing amongst different stakeholders. If your carrier believes a pickup time is X and you believe it's Y, that's not a way to start. So making sure that all that information is clear to everyone was very critical to us. And from an outbound perspective, really the carrier collaboration and proactive exception management is extremely critical to meet the customer demands. So we understand when we make a delivery appointment, are we going to hit that or not? And we've talked about that multiple times today, multiple sessions have talked about it, but leveraging your system from an appointment perspective, as well as using core tracking, is extremely critical to that. So overall, 4 kites is the connective tissue for optimizing inbound and outbound supply chain, centralizing the data, and accelerating decision making. So next, I'm going to talk about how to make it all work. And there's 2 fundamental points that we need to talk through. First being integrated intelligent systems and an operational excellence framework. As we talk about integrated intelligent systems, as I mentioned multiple times, real-time data foundation is critical, right? Integrating that ERP system, whether you're going to cloud migration and your WMS systems, is extremely critical to tie back to the forecast data that you have. Next thing is around predictive scheduling. Niagara is a little unique in how we schedule. So most of us tender a shipment to the carrier, then the carrier accepts it, then the carrier chooses a pickup appointment or delivery appointment with the customer. That's not how Niagara works. We actually scheduled the delivery appointment and scheduled the pickup appointment, then we tender the shipment to the carrier. So what this does, it puts the parameters so the carrier understands when we're trying to get the shipment delivered, and it's almost a fixed time that they have, but we know that there needs to be flexibility on the carrier's end to make additional changes and decisions as they need to. So with that not being manual, we know that automation for scalability. So making sure that regardless if I have 50 facilities or if I have 100 facilities or if I have 1 million loads or 2 million loads, whatever decision that we were going to make, it had to scale appropriately. The next thing, and I'm really proud of this, is the functionality customizations. Niagara working with Four Kites has been awesome. We have really worked together well to customize the tool for our use to hopefully be able to share with others that may deal with similar things that we're dealing with. The next piece that's very critical is expanded user base. So this is not just a tool for our folks that sit at our HQ in California. This is a tool that we want our plants to use. It's a tool we want our carriers to use, and potentially some of our customers' carriers as well, to leverage the tool so that everyone can see all of the same information and we move forward in that direction. The final piece is the roadmap vision. So making sure that we understand as we put this in place, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to use the tool? Who's going to be the users? And really making sure that we map that out so that as we build the tool, it gives us the desired objectives. An operational excellence framework. Obviously, one of the biggest issues that we all have is carrier compliance. So in this realm, it's carrier compliance to adhering to the appointments that they have agreed to, right? Like I mentioned, when we tender the load, the carrier knows when they're supposed to pick it up and they know when they're going to deliver it. So are they compliant to that? And if they're not compliant to that, what are we doing with performance management? Now, critical point here, we all have the carrot stick analogy, but here again, we want to make sure that we try to lead with the carrot, but ultimately if the carriers aren't compliant, there could be financial enforcement if they're not compliant to that piece. And the third point is data quality and technical standards. This is paramount to any setup. So what we did, and similar to what some of you all may have done, we required the 5-minute ping frequency and working with certain exception managements. There's certain shipments that you're probably not gonna want to put into the tool, things like tankers or things that run a little bit differently. Also focusing on integration cleanup. So after we went live, we would need to make sure that we really cleaned up a lot of the data. We saw an 85% reduction in the failures after we cleaned up a lot of the data. And then as we worked with the carriers, we saw missing information move from about a 5.5% down to less than 2%. On this next slide, what I want to point out is something that we found that we weren't even searching for that Four Kites helped us leverage, Appointment Manager helped us leverage. What you see on the screen before you is the concept called pickup appointment optimality. So I first want to tell a quick story about how we got here. Most of our carriers, what do they focus on? Process time, right? Checking into your facility, checking out of your facility. Most carriers want to get in and out of your facilities in less than 2 hours. At Niagara, we invested millions over the last 4 years to become shipper of choice in this area, where we moved from having roughly about 60 to 70% of our shipments ship out in less than 2 hours to this year, well over 90% of our shipments will get in and out of facilities in less than 2 hours. And that was a huge focus. And so we were very proud of that. We've seen lots of benefits from that, things like reduced detention, accessorials going away, and freight rate advantages. But then one of our larger carriers came to us and said, thank you, Niagara, for doing this, but when are you going to give me a good pickup appointment time? So that's where we backed into this situation. So let's look at this point. Like I mentioned, we start with the delivery appointment time. This shipment is supposed to deliver to our customer at 4 p.m. You back out transit time at 2 hours. You back out loading times of 2 hours. The optimal pickup appointment time is 12 p.m. noon. But what happens when you don't have an appointment at 12 p.m. noon? Then you have to move it to maybe 11 a.m., then 10 a.m., then 9 a.m., and ultimately for this shipment, 8 a.m. So there's 4 hours of suboptimal time that if the carrier adheres to their pickup appointment time, which again, some of them do, some of them don't, they would have wasted 4 hours. So what we were able to do with the Appointment Manager tool is leverage the information that we had and the system capabilities to split up our docs between preloads and live loads. So as you guys know, for preloads, you can load them pretty much whenever you want to. And what was happening though, because we had everything on the same dock in our prior system, all of the preload shipments, despite the fact we were loading them earlier than that, they were sucking up the slots for the live load shipments. So we were moving the live load shipments to suboptimal times when we really didn't have to. So we were able to really leverage 4Kites to split those docks up, segregate those times, and decide which hours, based upon data that we drew, were more optimal for live loads and which shipments were more optimal for preloads. And this was seamlessly done. It was no big lift. It was no major change. It was a couple parameters within the system. And for those of you that actually have Appointment Manager, fun tip, optimality setting, there are optimality settings under the company settings that enable some outbound flexibility. This example I'm giving you on how you optimize the various hours, there is additional data that you all will have to glean from your systems and working on your specific shipments, but the capability is within the system. So next, let's talk about the results. So the results were amazing. So our total reschedule rate is 15.6%. It's 32% better than industry average. We've processed year to date over 1 million plus shipments. And most importantly, we saved over 33,000 hours in manual labor associated with scheduling shipments. All right, so what's next for Niagara? What's next for us is continue to optimize the inbound portion. This is very tough because, as many of you know, the inbound portion comes from tons of different suppliers. These suppliers not are all familiar with 4Kites. They're not all used to booking on a platform. So making sure that we optimize the inbound portion is very critical to our success. We also want to lean into some AI enhancements. We've seen a lot of stuff here today that we're going to understand how it fits within our ecosystem and what things we can use. And for us, we want to position ourselves as market leaders in technology and leading the way into the future. So I'm going to talk a few minutes about what's next for you and what I would encourage you leaders to do as you guys move forward with this. As we've mentioned multiple times, foundation first. You have to have core tracking dialed in before any advanced orchestration. The second point I really want to hone in for is VP level commitment is essential. Having your leadership understand why you're using this tool, why you want to spend hard dollars on this money or on this tool is very important. That's something that you all should make sure you gain alignment on. So working with your 4Kites counterparts to get the proper ROI is extremely important. The third thing I want to encourage you is that no, we did not roll out 77 facilities in one day. We leveraged the different facility types to make sure that prior to rolling out to a new facility, we rolled out a pilot site or a group of pilot sites. We worked on the bugs together, and then we proceeded. The fastest way to fail in a project is to roll out too fast and to have issues with the stakeholders. So we didn't want to lose stakeholder engagement in something that we knew was overall best for the organization. So we took our time with it. And it's also very important as you guys move forward to understand from those various stakeholders, pick a few super users. Make sure that those super users have full access to both your Niagara or your company team members in IT that are working on the problem, as well as 4Kites, because they gave us the insights of which things were wrong and which things we needed to modify and ultimately fix. And then lastly, and I, again, want to keep harping on this, is that the customer-vendor collaboration model is the way to go. There are a lot of tools that are developed, out the box that we sometimes are kind of forced to use and forced to navigate around. What I love and what our organization is very proud of with working with 4Kites is that some of the components really that came out of the Appointment Manager tool were things that we specifically needed to make sure that our operations were successful. And overall, with that, thank you all for your time today. And if you guys have any questions, I'll see you guys out in the foyer.